There have been some pretty interesting observations from people in court about the jurors today at Donald Trump's hush money trial. It has been a long week. We've said that. But our folks say they do seem at times enthralled at this fourth day of testimony from David Pecker. They've been seen taking notes while their eyes are bouncing back and forth between Pecker and defense attorney Bovee. One juror has been seen chewing on the end of a pen while eyes are focused on Pecker. These are the kinds of details that jury consultants may be looking at closely during the trial because, remember, the defense only needs to convince one juror if they want to keep this case from having a conviction. Joining me now, MSNBC's Katie Phang, jury consultant and founder of Trial Methods, Alan Turkheimer. Tristan Snell is back with me. Katie, I'm going to start with you because you wrote an article about this. What do we know about jury consultants and how they're being used in this case?
Well, we do have reporting from NBC News that the Trump defense team in this particular trial has been using a jury consulting firm out of Philadelphia. Now, interestingly, Chris, that jury consulting firm was used in the second defamation trial that was brought by writer E. Jean Carroll against Donald Trump. And we all know that the verdict in that was a whopping multi-million-dollar one. But the jury consultants in this case, depending upon their retention agreement with the client, could start from the very beginning, meaning before the jurors are even brought in terms of the potential venire. Meaning from day one of their retention, they sit down and they consider what would be the profile for the perfect juror in this case, considering all of the issues, considering the personalities, considering all the parties, considering all the lawyers. I mean, it's a perfectly choreographed investigation and a deep dive into what the issues are in the case to be able to try to find the right juror to be able to sit on this trial. But it doesn't end sometimes for a jury consultant there. Sometimes they stay all the way through the verdict because, as you just noted, Chris, you want to be able to look at the jurors during the course of the trial to see whether or not you can pick up on cues and certain things like body language that would indicate that they're either buying what you're selling or they're not.
So, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know and what I've read, and not just from sources within NBC, we don't know if there have been any jury consultants actually in the courtroom, right, on either side.
Yeah, well, we do know that Trump's team actually had jury consultants. Whether or not they were physically located inside the courtroom is not a requirement. They could be communicating with the defense team from outside of the courtroom. But more importantly, we don't know if the prosecution has one. Sometimes it's an expense that just cannot be afforded by the government or even more importantly, a state agency like the DA's office in Manhattan. And so we don't know if the prosecution has been doing it. But you know, Chris, very quickly, you don't necessarily need a jury consultant to be able to do this. Alan's amazing and does his job impeccably well. But if you don't have the resources, you can also do your own research in terms of the social media history, et cetera, of the background of these jurors.
So, Alan, I'm going to make an assumption. Tell me if it's right here, that going into this, again, going back to the idea, you only need one juror to hang this thing, right? Only one to say that they have questions. They don't know that this has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. They know going in, the defense knows going in, who the likely juror or jurors might be?
Well, that's what they hope to do, and that's how they try to structure the questioning and reviewing the process and determining the personalities of the jurors and what it is about their backgrounds, what they do for a living. So there's a whole wide variety of considerations that come into play when you're helping not really select a jury, but deselect a jury, because your job as a jury consultant, or at least one of them early on, is to make sure that if jurors are going to be biased against your client, you need to make sure that they're given the opportunity to express that bias. And then you try to get rid of that juror for cause, or ultimately you might have to use a peremptory challenge on that juror. But you are definitely looking for jurors who are negatively disposed to your client in your case at that early stage of jury selection.
So that part's done. There's nothing you can do about it. The jury's seated. So tell me, Alan, assuming that they've kept on a jury consultant, what are they listening for? And if they're not in the courtroom, can they watch? How important is it for someone to be in the courtroom to actually see the jurors, how they're reacting, sort of how much attention, for example, they pay to Donald Trump?
Right. And it's important to dispel the notion that jury consultants think they can read minds or that we stalk jurors. None of that happens. We have to rely on reporting from what goes on. Transcripts are certainly valuable. But if we can be in the courtroom, it's certainly an important factor. Now, once the jury is seated, litigation jury consultants, they bridge the gap between lawyer and jury. And in a sense, most of the jury consultants have a background in psychology, persuasion. And so the key is to understand how the lawyer's arguments are going to be received, what words should be used, what themes should be put forward. Lawyers are so immersed in their case, they often overlook the fact that these are lay people, even though there are two lawyers on the jury, but lay people are going to be deciding the key questions in a case. So jury consultants have to empower the lawyers to make the right arguments. And then during the questioning of witnesses, they want to make sure that certain questions might get asked. And also if jury consultants can be in the courtroom, yes, they will try to pick up on things, what's going on with the jurors. But it's a difficult task to try to know exactly what they're thinking. But I think with experience, you can understand how certain testimony is received by jurors in a case.
We hear often, Tristan, that prosecutors, and Katie mentioned this, that prosecutors often don't have the money that a defense team has to have a jury consultant. Does that put them often at a disadvantage?
Maybe yes, maybe no. I think that the prosecutors, good prosecutors have been doing it for long enough that a lot of them have a good sense. They're in a whole office with a lot of other people who do those kind of cases all the time. Put it this way, a prosecutor's office does go to trial. Defense lawyers, even a good defense firm, they try never to go to trial. So they may actually not have as many trials as we might think that they would have. They are trying to get people to plead. They're trying to get some kind of settlement or some kind of other arrangement to get their client off the hook. Like a really good white-collar criminal defense attorney, they're not necessarily going to trial all the time if they can help it. Somebody in the prosecutor's office is always going to trial. So you've got a wealth of trial experience there. So I would not say that just because they can't hire jury consultants that they don't have folks that are veterans of the jury process and veterans of being in trial and being able to suss that out.
I want to read something. We have people who are just sort of putting in color, Alan, and it was about specifically what happened today. Bovie's cross has been sharp, tight, and to the point. Whether or not he has poked sufficient holes in Pecker's story is yet to be seen. But again, he is looking to convince just one juror. If you're there, again, not a mind reader, but can you tell when something has connected generally?
By listening to the answers and watching the witness, I think a lot of us can have a good sense of how it's being received by the jury. And I think what the questioning is intended to do is they're trying to drive a wedge between, yes, there's some sordid behavior and underhanded antics on the part of the Trump world, but it's completely different than what the legal question is in the case. So that's what the defense has to do in cross-examination. It questions Mr. Pecker about other clients that he did this for before Trump and that he even did this with Trump before the election. So that's just what they have to do. And I think it's also crucial from a defense perspective and from a jury perspective that you want to make sure that the demeanor, and this is from, if the demeanor changes from direct to cross, then the jurors are going to think, well, then there's something maybe that makes me think that he was coached in the beginning or he has an agenda. So that's something that we would keep an eye on, and we would wonder how the jury would react to that testimony.